Hi everyone. So to assist with the lab, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through going through all of the steps of the lab. So here in this first tutorial, you're asked to build your first Blazor app. So the purpose of this is to build a web app that's based on Blazor. And it says it's going to take 10-15 minutes. It may or may not take that long. When we get started, we want to make sure that we have the .NET SDK installed. We should also have Visual Studio installed. Now, one of the pain points some students have encountered is that this tutorial does not assume the installation of Visual Studio. So it uses a number of command line options instead of standard Visual Studio commands. So now to begin this tutorial, what we need to do is we need to open a command prompt. So I'm going to go to the Start menu on my Windows machine. On a Mac, it'll be the same, but it'll be called Terminal. And I'm going to type Command. And then what I'd like to choose is Command Prompt. Now, in Windows, when this opens, it takes you to a location that is for your specific user. A spot on your hard drive where things related to your user are created. Now, I'd like to not save my files in that specific location, so I'm going to switch to the directory Documents. And inside Documents, I've made myself one called the course code. And I want to put all of the information inside there, all of the tutorials, things like that. So if you don't know DOS commands, well, I just showed them to you. So these are the commands that you need. Also, I can open up the folder itself. So by opening this folder here, I can see that I have documents, and then I have my folder STA1001. So that's where I'm going to be working, but I happen to be inside a command window here. Now I'll just organize these so we can see a little bit more of everything at the same time. Now I'll change the sizes. Just move them around. There. So now we scroll down, and they want you to run a command called .NET. So if I copy this and I paste it here, well, all this command is doing is it's going to tell you that do you have it installed? Well, if it runs and it prints out information like it did for me, then yeah, it's installed. So it's good. All I have to do is move on. Now what it wants you to do is run a command that's going to do a couple things. Now, I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it here. Now, the .NET new Blazor command, what it does is it creates a new Blazor app. The purpose of this command is just to create a new project in Visual Studio. Now, because this tutorial is assuming you might not have Visual Studio installed, it's doing it for you. So this is the same thing as going into Visual Studio, choosing Create New Project, and then choosing Blazor Server, and then giving it a name, choosing a location, and pressing Next, and going through the wizard. This command accomplishes the same thing. Now, for the purpose of going through this tutorial without Visual Studio, I'm going to do it the way that they're describing it. Now, the next command here they have is cd Blazor app. Well, you can see here in my directory, I now have a new folder. So cd Blazor app just takes me into the folder. If I open it up, I can see there's a whole bunch of files. These files are very similar to what we got when we created a new Blazor app inside Visual Studio. Description of all the files and what they are right here. And then it wants us to run this command .NET run. Well, because we're inside the Blazor app folder, when we say .NET run, it's going to say, what do you want to run? Well, you want to run what's in the folder. And that's the new Blazor app. Now that I've run the .NET run command, nothing much happened. It just said now it's listening on, it gives me a website address. And it sits here and it says, well, it's using this program and it's using a development environment, but nothing happened. Well, because what we need to do is we need to copy this website address. We need to go up to our browser We'll just make a new tab, we'll paste it here, and now we have a program, so we can open it. And we can see what we're supposed to be seeing. So we'll look right here. The instructions say, wait for the app to display. That's listening on this. So it might not open a browser directly, but if we open a browser, we go to the address, we can see. And the page that is showing us is the index.razor file. If we look at the index.razor file, it looks like this. And we can look at it. If we go right here, and then we go into pages, and then we choose index.razor, and I'm just going to right click it. For simplicity, we could open this in Visual Studio. It's not necessary. We're just making very, very minor modifications. I'm going to choose open with, and I'm just going to scroll down, and I'm going to choose Notepad. It'll be much faster. It'll be easier. We could open in Visual Studio. That's okay too. But for simplicity, I'm going to open it in Notepad. Now, if I look at the file, the contents are right here, which matches what they're showing us right here. So if I continue, so I want you to try the counter. So I'll flip back to the page. We'll go to the counter. I'll try it out. Yeah, it works just great. All right. So now, if we want to look at the implementation of the counter, we look in pages and then counter.razor. So here I'm going to close this, and instead I'll look at counter.razor. All right. So again, I'm going to open with Notepad because I think it's a little easier. And there's the contents of the file, and they also show us the contents right here. So a request for /counter in the browser takes us to the counter page. So here, if we go and look at the website, well, we're just putting /counter. So if we change it, we take that off, we can type counter, that takes us there. And if we look up here, that's what this page directive says, right? So right there. So if we did counter 2 and we change the name of that, then we go over here. Well, we don't get anything. Well, that's because we didn't restart our program. So down here, if I were to press Control C, as it says, Control C, and then I run it again, and notice that when I stopped it, when I pressed Control C, that the website broke. But that's okay, that's what we told it to do. So we refresh, and look at that. So we go /counter, oh, there's nothing at this address. We go counter 2, there. So we've changed the name of what the page is. We've changed the website address, or the directory, or the file name, or the URL that needs to be used to access this page. Okay, so but for right now, I'm going to put it back the way it was. So I'll close this, and I will press Control C again, and I will run it again, and we'll have everything back the way it was. So keep going through the tutorial. Now, when we're looking at the code, we look and we see on click, increment count. Well, here's our method, increment count. So when you click this button, it causes this to increment. So now, what we want to do is we want to try adding the counter to another page. So we go back to our page, we reload, and notice that I changed it back, so now it's counter. So we can try it out, works great. We go back to the main page. There's no counter here. Perhaps it would be nice if we had a counter there. So just going back to index, open with, Notepad, and we could just type counter. And now what we're telling it is to include the contents of the counter on the main page. When we refresh, well, nothing's happened because we need to stop our program with Control C. We need to run it again. So now, when we go to counter or home, we have a counter that's included on home. We go to counter, we have one there, But notice that the numbers aren't persisting. There's nothing here to save. That's not the point of the program, so that's okay. Every time you go from page to page, the counter always resets. But that's what this tutorial is meant to be. So the instructions are telling us add this. Well, we did that. And rerun your app. Well, we did that. And then we see the counter. Perfect. So now what we want to do is we want to modify the counter component so that we can change how much it increments by. So what we can do is we can take our index and we can close that. We don't need it anymore. Let's go to our counter page. Let's go over to Notepad. And we're just going to add in some things. Now the colored sections right here are where we're adding. So right here, we'd like to add a parameter that can be used for passing in how much we want to increment by. So it's going to be parameter, it's going to be public, an integer, increment, amount, get, set, equals 1. So basically what we're saying is the default amount that the increment amount is going to be is 1. So we'll copy this. And we'd like the current count. Right now it's incrementing by 1 with the plus plus. But instead we want it to go incremented by that amount. And we save this. And now what we want to do is close this. And we want to go over to our index page again. And our counter, let's add, we'll add our parameter of increment amount. And we'll set it to 10. So on the index page, the increment amount will be 10. But because we're not changing anything on the counter page, it'll be a default of 1. So it'll stay the same. Now what we need to do is we need to Control-C, stop our little web server. We do .NET run. So now if we come up here and we reload, and let's just try counter first. Works exactly the same as it did. Current count goes up by 1. Over the home screen, 10, 20, 30. So now it increments by 10. So we've made that change to that page and how it works. Now right here, we've completed the entire tutorial. So what I can do is I can go back to the previous directory. I can see that I have all the pages. Let's stop our program. Let's go back one step. So right there. And I can go send to compressed zip. So now that I've got my zip file, I want to name it the appropriate name for the lab. So now I'm going to go over to the lab instructions and I'll find the spot where it talks about what to name the file. I'm just going to copy this and I'll paste it right here. I'll make sure I don't have a space at the beginning. Oh, 2 zips, that's not going to work. Get rid of that. And we'll put first Blazor, student number. I don't have a student number, but A00000000. I'll just pretend. And then last name. Put my last name, and then I'll change this my first name. Just like that. Then I'll take this, and I will upload the file. And then I can move on to the next step.